Hey everybody, and welcome back to Lindsey's Little Library. So today I want to go through all of the books that I read in July, which turned out to be quite the reading month for me, and I didn't even realize it in the midst of it. I was preparing for this video and writing down what I've read and found out I read 11 books, and I'm not really sure how that happened, but it happened. And there were some really good books that I read, so let's get into it because I have a lot to talk about. First one I finished is Meet Me at the Lake by Carly Fortune. Really just finished this at the very beginning of July, so maybe, does it really still count? I think so. But this one is the first book that I read by Carly Fortune. I did not read Every Summer After. Last summer was kind of the big hit for that. So I really enjoyed it, but I've heard that people tend to like Every Summer After a little bit better, so it'll be interesting to kind of compare. But this one follows Fern and Will. And they ended up meeting and spent 24 hours, like a whole day together in their early 20s. Very like insta attraction, very, they tended to click quite well. But the timing was kind of wrong at the moment, but yet they both agreed they needed to reconnect. So they made a pact to meet again 1 year later. Fern showed up and Will didn't. Fast forward like 10 years-ish. Fern's life doesn't look nearly what she imagined it would be at the time. She ends up going back home and running her mom's lakeside resort. She never really wanted to do this, had no interest in being there. She liked her memories from there, but it just wasn't her overall dream. And finds out that the place is kind of falling apart. Her ex-boyfriend is the manager and she doesn't really know where to begin. And all of a sudden, yeah, Will shows up and he's there to help. And some things are uncovered. We go back and forth, figuring out kind of what happened and why and what's going from there. It's a really sweet book. I really enjoyed it. Perfect kind of like lakeside reading. That's actually where I read it when I was at the lake. So highly recommend this one, and like I said, I'm interested to see how it compares to Every Summer After for me personally, but I gave this one 4 stars for sure, so loved it. I did listen to a few books. I've been listening to a lot of books this summer. This is one that I did listen to just because I got it through Libro.fm, even though I have a copy. I also did that with this one. I listened to Devolution by Max Brooks. This was one that was recommended during, I think our very first BookTube Besties reading retreat that we did. And oh my gosh, I mean, the high caliber of book recommendations that come out of those is fantastic. And if any of them are based on this one, this was so phenomenal. And never a book I thought that I would ever be gravitated towards. So thank you for recommending it and making me pick it up, because this is one I'm like telling everybody about. So this is the first-hand account of the Rainier Sasquatch Massacre. I know, you got to kind of open up your believability a little bit, but what we are doing is basically following, and the way it's written is so unique. So you have kind of case studies, interviews, journal entries, all put together to kind of tell this story. So Mount Rainier erupted, and everything kind of settles down, and there is this little town called Green Loop that kind of goes unnoticed and is kind of cut off from the rest of the world. They, on purpose, were a little bit on their own anyways. I mean, they had very high technology and they had all the comforts. It's not like it was completely off the grid, but not too many people like really went there. There was like one road in, one road out, and it was kind of, they were left by themselves. And so when the volcano erupted, the one road leading in is cut off, and there's no technology to like remind people that they're there. And at the same time, we are following this tribe, group, flock of Bigfoots who also get cut off from their regular food supply and are stuck in the same place as all these people that live in Green Loop. It's so good, you guys. I couldn't stop listening to this. I was like weeding outside. I don't do that. I was voluntarily doing anything I could to listen to this in my ears. So 5 stars. I loved it. Did I give it 5 stars? Maybe 4. Nope, 5. Trying to wrap up on trying to rein back on my 5 stars because I feel like that should be reserved for really, really special books. So I kind of used to hand them out like candy. Now I've only handed out 2 of them this month. So keep me in check. All right. But 4 stars are still great. Anyways, that one was 5 stars. That was fantastic. And if you can listen to that one, whoa, so great. Okay. All right. Next one I read for a book club is Someone Else's Shoes by Jojo Moyes. And I have been hit or miss with Jojo Moyes. I kind of shied away from her for a bit, and ever since Giver of Stars and now this one, I need to refamiliarize myself with this lovely lady because this was fantastic. I was expecting kind of this light, funny-ish contemporary, and it ended up being a little bit more than I expected, and I love that about it. I love the like little lessons that were the undertones of the book, if you will. So we have Nisha and Sam, very different women. They end up being at the same gym at the same time, and they end up both having very similar like gym bags, and one of them grabs the others and they part ways. And little do they know that that small little mistake will snowball into life-changing situations. And I was here for it. I was here for this representation of a working mom who is trying to do it all and expected to do it all and feeling that pressure and wondering why is that an expectation right now. I'm here for the other woman who is, again, in this like role and having to fill this role and not able to be herself. Oh my gosh. It's so, and like becomes almost powerless at one point. It's so fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Just go along for the ride. It was really sweet. It's a little chunker, but I mean, it went pretty quick in my opinion. So I gave this one 4 stars. Really good discussion at book club too, which sometimes you don't know. Certain books are not the greatest book club books over others. I should do a video on that and tell you like from a book club perspective, which ones to kind of go towards that might lead to a better book club experience. That's a good idea. Let me know if I should do that. All right, the next book I read was Message from the Unknown Chinese Mother by Zinran. This is hard and this is heavy, but so just wow. So this is basically her taking the stories of women in China who were forced or coerced or were given no other option in order to survive other than giving up their girl babies. It was a hard read. It explains kind of how that occurred, where that happened, culturally, how it was acceptable. It's such a hard read, but it's one of those things that like I should be even more known. And so you get these stories from these women as far as what they had to do or what they had to go through. Like I said, hard read. I gave this almost a 4 star because some of them, she goes on a little bit on some, I don't know. It definitely was like, I couldn't just sit down and read this book. I had to read like story by story. There's, I don't know, like maybe a dozen different stories in here, and I could only read one or two at a time. So it's definitely one that kind of sits on your nightstand and you just take in small doses, yet man alive, it makes me hug my babies. So it was really, again, eye-opening. Eye-opening is all I can have and say, and sad. So, but I really enjoyed it. I really, really did. It makes me so thankful for the freedom that I've been given from that standpoint to be able to just, whatever child I have would be accepted. Not necessarily in some people's world. So it was awesome. If that can be awesome, I think so. The next book I read was for this last BookTube Besties virtual reading retreat that we did. We decided to do a little bit of a twist this time, and we did a group read. So we all read The Getaway Girls by Dee McDonald. We were looking for some sort of road trip-ish themed book because that was the theme of our last of the last reading retreat. So this one follows 3 friends. We have Jill, Maggie, and oh no, what's her name? I'm surprised I remember 2 of them. Jill, Maggie, and starts with a C. Carol? No. Cindy? No. Anyways, 3 friends who are older women, like upper 60s, 70s, kind of in the next phase of their life, I guess I could say, and decide very on a whim to take this road trip. And so they go, they start in England and they end up going through France and into Italy. They buy this camper van, they're all together, they go for a wild ride. Not the best book I've ever read. I only gave it 2 stars. I would not necessarily highly recommend it. Maybe if you're just looking for that like cozy palate cleanser, easy read, and you don't get easily annoyed by certain writing styles or storylines that maybe don't always make sense, you could definitely pick it up. But we will do better next time. That's all I'm going to say about that one. Then I picked up another chunker. I am so excited on how, like, the big books that I picked up this month, like, that is not me. That is so not me. So, but I've read Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. And I love this book so much. So this is for my book club that's meeting actually this week. I don't remember what our theme was. I think it was Book of the Month book, I'm pretty sure. So it's sci-fi. It is science fiction. Not necessarily, again, not something I tend to gravitate towards. But Andy Weir, I'll read anything and everything that this man ever writes. So loved The Martian and loved Project Hail Mary. So we have an astronaut, Ryland, who is the sole survivor on a very desperate last chance mission to basically save Earth. If he doesn't succeed, it will perish. Except that right now he wakes up, he doesn't know who he is. He can't really remember his own name and doesn't really remember the assignment he's at. So all he knows is he's been asleep for a very long time and he's just been awakened to find himself millions of miles from home with nothing but 2 corpses for company. His crewmates are dead, his memories are fuzzily returning, and he realizes that an impossible task is now in front of him, hurtling him through space in this tiny ship. It's up to him to puzzle out an impossible scientific mystery, conquer an extinction level threat of other species, and he doesn't have a lot of time to do it. And we go from there. It's so crazy. It did get a little science-y at some points, but it didn't take away from the story. I feel like you could have probably skimmed a little bit through there and not really lost track of where the story was going. It's funny. It's unexpected. It makes you smile. It made me cry. It was all of it. All of the emotions. So I gave this 5 stars for sure. It was so good. So good. All right. Then I need to get back to the, creepiness that I love. And I read Campfire. This is by Sean Sarles. This was a book I picked up at the Goodwill kind of randomly, I believe. And it is a modern version R.L. Stine for adults. So was it a little predictable at times? Sure. Was it a little cringy at times? Sure. But then it wasn't. And then you're like, oh shoot. Here we go. If that makes any sense at all. So we have a group of friends and family who are gathering in a very remote location. And they're around a fire telling scary stories. And Caleb, who is the guide that got them up there, shares the legend of the mountain men who hunt down unsuspecting campers and carve grisly antlers into their victims' foreheads. The next day, the story comes true. And our main character who we're following is Maddie, and her family are lost in the deep woods, stalked by their worst nightmares because other stories were told that night, and stories that the endings far more terrifying that are starting to come true. So it was really good. I flew through it. I mean, we're talking pretty big margins here. I gave it, I want to say, probably, I'm gonna look at my notes. 3 stars. I would say more like 3.75. I have a feeling this is going to be a bit forgettable, but I mean, it was still, it's still worth it. I thought it was still great. Again, it started out a little cringy, but just kind of keep going and it gets there. Ooh, it gets there. It's crazy. Speaking of crazy, in my effort to read all of my Alice Feeney books, I listened to His and Hers, another one that I had, I think on Libro, that I got a while ago. So I popped that in my ear, and let's say that reading this in Devolution as I walk the dog, you know, in the woods on trails by myself is not always the best idea. But it does add to the creepiness, I'll tell you that. So let's see. We have Anna Andrews, who will do just about anything really for her career. She's very, very career-minded and very driven. She's asked to report on a woman's murder in Blackdown, which is a countryside village where she grew up, and she does not want to go there. It soon becomes clear that Anna isn't just covering the story. She's at the heart of it. She's connected to it. And then we have the detective Jack is suspicious of Anna's involvement in the case. He knows she knew the victim, but he hasn't told anyone that he also knew the victim. And so you get both perspectives from his and hers, and then from the killer's perspective. So the killer kind of chimes in every so often, but you really go back and forth between his story and her story. It was messy. It was messy and twisty and all kinds of Alice Feeney all over it, and I loved it. I think I gave it 4 stars. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So great. So I would say like way more twisty turny, a little more predictable, yet I wouldn't say they're super equal. I would put this one slightly above this one, but both still fantastic. Loved it. All right, so after all of this craziness of like toying with my crazy emotions, I wanted something a little bit sweeter, and so I picked up The Wishing Game and jumped on that bandwagon with, you know, everybody else. So this is by Meg Schaefer. I'm pretty sure this is her debut novel, and oh, way to knock it out of the park, Meg. Like, wow. Not quite. I thought it was a little more lighter, but nope, we get some emotions involved here for sure. So this follows this children's book author who is just renowned. Everyone loves him. Everyone loves the books that he has written. It's this Clock Island series. And all of a sudden he stops writing, and he kind of just shuts himself away on Clock Island and doesn't really come out much at all. And everyone's like, okay, wanting more and more and more from him. And he's basically kind of retired. Until one day he comes out of retirement and says, I'll write one more book in this series, but to release it, we're going to do a competition. There's going to be 4 people that we're going to bring to this island, and they're going to have to play this game, and winner gets the rights to this new book. And we go from there. Oh, so good. So good. Lucy is the one we really mainly follow as we understand where she kind of came from and grew up in, how she got chosen to play the game, being part of the game. Yeah, every emotion. It was so fantastic. I gave it 4 stars. Slightly predictable at times, but it was fine. Like I loved it. I loved it. I loved how the riddles tied into the stories. I loved just the general love for books, the general love for adventure, and this game element to it. It was written so beautifully. I mean, the writing itself was amazing. It's a hug in a book. You can't help but hug this book. It's so good. Just pick it up. The next book that I listened to in the month, crazy. I know I listened to 4 books in the month. Wow, I did. I just realized that. That's a lot. Was what's it called? The House of Eve by Sadiqa Johnson. And Sadiqa Johnson wrote Yellow Wife, which I also really loved, and have been on the waiting list for a long time for The House of Eve, and it was released, and I'm like down for it right now. So it's a historical fiction book that follows 2 main characters who find themselves in a predicament facing motherhood. It is on the lines of Looking for Jane and the Home for Unwanted Girls. So one of the girls ends up pregnant and is forced to kind of go to this home where she's allowed to stay there and have the baby, and the babies are adopted. So we follow how these two find themselves on the journey that there are, the experience and the decisions they are forced to make. It was so beautifully done. I will read everything that Sudeikwa Johnson writes. I think it was fantastic historical fiction. Slightly long. I don't think it needed to be quite as long as it was. And then it wrapped up really, really quickly. And I would have liked to know just another step further into kind of what happened after it. It wasn't quite the wrap up I was looking for. Not that it makes it a horrible book. It's just, I would have liked a little bit more. So gave it 4 stars. Really, really enjoyed that book. And then final one that I picked up in July is If the Shoe Fits by Julie Murphy. Amanda pushed this in my hands and was like, you need to read this book. Okay. So this one follows Cindy. She is obsessed with shoes. I read 2 books that had a shoe theme this month. This one and then someone else's shoes, which was kind of ironic and crazy. But you know me, I look for those crazy connections. So anyways, she loves shoes. She went to New York. She was at Parsons Design School. She has this new degree. She wants to be a designer and finds herself in a situation where, well, she doesn't really have a job. There's no prospects. She's kind of like stuck. So she ends up moving back to LA, which she was in New York, moved back to Los Angeles, where her stepmother, Erica, is the executive producer on a reality dating show called Before Midnight. At the very last minute, she ends up filling in on this show as a contestant. She kind of was like, okay, I'll go there. I'll get some exposure and it'll lead to a job. I'm not really here looking for love. Famous last words. We go from there. It was sweet. It was awesome. It was really good. There was definitely some funny points in this one. I'm more of a romantic comedy lover instead of just romance. Like, if I'm going to read a romance, you better make me laugh a little bit. It's kind of my caveat. I need that. Little cliche, a little predictable, sure. Still just enjoyed it. I love these are just good, easy reads in between some of my heavier stuff. So I love it. I gave it 4 stars. 4 stars. So those are the 11 books that I read in July, which is crazy. What's up next? Let's see. What do I have next? I have this one I have to read. So good. And then, I have this little stack of books that is kind of up next. So Forbidden Library, Want to Get to, Map of Stars, Salt and Stars. Remember I did that roll your next read for that. Take My Hand is a book club book I need to read, and then my last 2 5-star predictions. So that's not quite, there's room for more in there for some mood reading. So I want to read, obviously I need to download another audiobook because I finished the other one that I was reading that I haven't talked about, but it was so good. And then we'll kind of see. I did a little rearranging on the shelf, so I've been my eyes have been catching some books I haven't really focused on in a while. So we'll see where it takes me. Otherwise, hopefully we get another chunk of books read. I love it. I love that these all come off my shelf now. They're read. Well, some will go back on. Anyways, what good books did you read this month? Comment below. Let me know what you have. Otherwise, like and subscribe and all that fun stuff. And I'll see you next time. Bye.